Welcome to The Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into one of the most, well, intellectually aggressive documents we've come across in a while. This isn't a self-help book. It's much closer to a blueprint. We're looking at an advanced training protocol. It's called Tree of Life Initiation. And the subtitle is Combat Engineering for Your Psyche.
That subtitle, that's the entire conversation right there, isn't it? It immediately puts you in a framework that doesn't look at modern anxiety or that feeling of emptiness through the lens of pathology. It doesn't see you as broken.
Right. It sees it as a strategic failure.
A strategic failure, exactly.
And that's the central idea we have to grapple with right from the start. What if that feeling that something is deeply wrong, the pressure in your chest, the anxiety, what if we've been misinterpreting it this whole time? The usual solution is, well, it's therapy, right? Or medication. It's about repair. But this document argues for a total pivot. It asks, what if you don't need therapy? What if what you really need is strategy?
Well, the environment demands it. Just look around. The old certainties, they're dissolving. Politics, the economy, what we believe in. And at the same time, technology is accelerating so fast, our nervous systems just can't keep up. It's like constant vertigo. To feel overwhelmed in this situation, that's not a sickness. That's just being realistic.
I see the point, but I have to push on this. When we're talking about anxiety, aren't we still dealing with something physiological, a chemical reality? How does this document get around the evidence-based paradigm that says this could be a chemical imbalance?
It's a necessary question, and the material doesn't dismiss the physiological side of things. It redefines the cause. It argues that the biochemical reaction is a symptom. It's the end result of a systemic collapse, not the root problem. It's like the standard approach is trying to medicate the dashboard warning light while completely ignoring that the entire engine is overheating.
So if the world is the pressure cooker and our internal systems can't handle it, then all the common advice, medicate, think positive, just accept the chaos, that's like treating the smoke while the building is on fire.
Precisely. And this is where the material delivers its core reevaluation, and it does it with this almost aggressive clarity. It says, you are not sick, you are unarmed.
Wow. That phrase hits hard. Unarmed. It just completely shifts the focus. It's not about being a defective person. It's about being unprepared. Society tells me if I feel anxiety, I have a flaw, but this is saying I lack the right equipment, the right architecture.
It reframes the whole experience as a technical malfunction, not a moral failing. Think about the software analogy the document uses. The world today is running on, AI, quantum level complexity, exponential information flow. But we are trying to process that reality on an emotional operating system built for the 20th century, maybe even earlier.
Like trying to run a brand new high-end video game on a computer from 1995.
Exactly. The system crashes. Of course it crashes. That anxiety you feel, that's your CPU overheating. It's a natural signal that your internal architecture is not sufficient for the current operating environment. So the solution isn't to soothe it, it's a structural overhaul.
You don't try to comfort the machine, you install a new OS, a robust one, which, okay, this brings us to the elephant in the room. Because the name of this source material, Guerrilla Kabbalah.
For the kind of person we're talking about, the pragmatist, that's going to sound mystical or esoteric. Maybe something to avoid.
And that skepticism is completely warranted. But what's so interesting here is that the architects of this program have performed a kind of intellectual surgery. They've taken this ancient, profound structural model Kabbalah, and they have stripped it of all dogma, all ritual, all religious interpretation. They've kept only the engineering principles.
So we need to be very, very clear for anyone listening about what this course is not. Absolutely critical. This is not a spiritual retreat to float away from reality. You will not be chanting mantras. It doesn't promise the universe will grant you wishes if you just, vibrate high. This approach is a complete rejection of passive self-help. It's about structure, not worship.
Okay, so if we're using Kabbalah as just another term for ancestral technology, what's the actual methodology here? How does the overhaul happen?
The methodology is defined as the reverse engineering of the soul. They treat the classical framework, the Tree of Life, not as some mystical diagram you meditate on, but as a piece of ancestral technology, a blueprint, a highly precise, reliable blueprint of how human psychology actually functions.
A blueprint for the invisible parts of us. But why this one? Why this ancient map instead of, say, starting from scratch with modern psychology?
Because modern psychology is often brilliant at diagnosing the crash, but it sometimes lacks a complete architectural map of the system before it crashed. The Tree of Life, in this specific context, is used as an instruction manual. and has been deliberately stripped of all the, quote, mystical and dusty baggage.
So instead of reinventing the wheel, they're using a system that's been mapping consciousness for millennia. We're talking about using verified principles for strategic psychological engineering.
Exactly right. Think of the Tree of Life not as a drawing, but as a wiring diagram for a complex facility. Every node, every line. It's a pathway for energy, for information, for decision-making. The training then uses what the source calls engineering protocols, things like the dimensional elevator or signal versus antenna. If you know where the wires go, you know where to install the new circuit breaker.
That framing makes it much more accessible, but the pragmatist still needs to know what's the utility, what are the deliverables. If someone commits to this rigorous training, what functions does the new operating system enable?
This is the crucial part. We move from diagnosis to the actual engineering outcomes. The training outlines 3 critical achievements, and these aren't just feelings. They are tools for strategic advantage.
Okay, let's break them down. The first one, given the overheated CPU we talked about, what's the first fix?
The first is emotional sovereignty. Right now, your internal state is constantly being hacked. By the news cycle, by social media, by an email from your boss. Sovereignty means stopping that reaction loop. It means external data hits your system, but it no longer runs your system.
So most people are like a weather vane, just spinning with whatever way the wind is blowing. This is about anchoring it.
Absolutely. The goal is to build your own center of gravity. The training gives you the schematics to locate and then reinforce that center. For example, it uses the concept of Melka, not as a mystical realm, but as your direct capacity to handle reality without breaking. When your center holds, the volatility outside becomes, well, it becomes irrelevant to your internal state. That's combat engineering 101.
Okay, that's a very clear tactical objective. But what about the bigger issue? The modern crisis of meaning. So much of this pain comes from feeling like a passive victim. What's the second advantage?
The second is meaning in chaos. When you have the blueprint, you start to understand why things are happening to you, not just that they are happening. And this is the radical shift. It moves you from victim to agent.
Can you give an example of how that works? How does structure create agency?
When you understand the protocols, the cycles, you stop attributing things to just bad luck or some abstract fate. You can see exactly where your own internal structure intersected with the external environment to produce a result. Once you see the geometry of cause and effect, you stop being a victim of fate. You become the player in your own game. You can anticipate, you can intervene, you gain foresight.
A huge leverage point, moving from being acted upon to acting with intention. Okay, so what's the third deliverable? It's about this liquid world the source mentions, where nothing feels solid.
The third pillar is internal structure. The goal here is to achieve a skeleton of steel in that liquid world. It's about creating a foundational rigidity so that under immense pressure, your core doesn't just collapse into confusion.
That sounds incredibly difficult. How is that steel skeleton actually built? What are the maneuvers involved?
It comes down to strategically allocating your core resources. Your fear, your desire, and your intellect. In most people, these 3 forces are just running wild. They're in conflict. Your fear paralyzes you, your desire distracts you, and your intellect just comes up with excuses for the whole mess.
So how does the program remap them?
This is the core of the engineering. It's not about getting rid of fear, that's impossible. It's about rerouting it. Fear is moved from being the system overrided to becoming a strategic sensor. It alerts you without controlling you. Desire is harnessed. Instead of leading you on wild chases, it becomes focused propulsion, aimed only at strategic goals.
And the intellect?
The intellect is put in its proper place as the calm navigator. It takes the data from the fear sensor, it uses the propulsion from desire, and it calculates the optimal path. When those 3 are aligned to the right channels, which the blueprint details, they work for you. They create that steel framework. They stop being a source of internal war.
That provides a stunning level of tactical detail. This is clearly not for the casually curious. So who is this for? Who is the target user for such a demanding program?
It's for a very specific person, someone who feels there's this huge structured potential inside them, but they just don't have the tools to unlock it. They're bored by religion, and they're, frankly, insulted by modern passive self-help.
They're looking for tools, not stories. Mastery, not comfort.
And crucially, they're not looking for a guru to save them. They're looking for the combat engineering manual to save themselves, to build themselves. This whole deep dive assumes you're ready to be your own architect.
So let's talk about the commitment. We've established this is combat engineering, not a comfort blanket. What's the price of admission?
The primary input before anything else is radical honesty. You cannot build a steel structure on a faulty foundation, and you are both the foreman and the foundation. If you're not willing to look in the mirror and face the brutal facts of your current architecture, none of this will work. It requires intense self-scrutiny and practice.
The difference between reading the field manual and actually drilling the maneuvers in the field over and over?
Yes, the transformation is earned, which brings us to the final synthesis from the source material, the threshold statement.
Let's end with that. That warning and that promise.
The warning is delivered with no ambiguity. It says, this course is not a magic pill, it is training. It will demand everything from you. But the promise, the potential transformation, is just as definitive.
The ultimate outcome if you cross that threshold and do the work.
You will never see the world or yourself with the same eyes again. The shift from being a technical malfunction reacting to chaos to becoming a well-structured player acting with intention. That's a permanent upgrade to how you process reality. The goal isn't just to exist, it's strategic mastery.